Okay, welcome to Wednesday Night Slides number 83. Um, Going to get started here right away. Let me just call up the program and then start the show here. You're seeing my Apple screensaver right now, I know, hopefully, because that's what you're supposed to be seeing. That will change momentarily here. All right, you should be seeing the title slide here.
We are.
Okay, as usual, if you have any comments or questions during the program, uh, feel free to unmute yourself and say your thing, and uh, then remute yourself. We do take questions here. All right, we're going to get started. Since this is the semi-quincentennial of the US of A, uh, we're going to have some patriotic stuff here first. The B&O Railroad Museum down in Baltimore, they have cosmetically restored American Freedom Train 484 number one, also known as Reading T1 2101. And they had the unveiling of it on January 12th. On the way down, I stopped at M&T Bank Stadium at Bailey's Y on the CSX main line. And this is a shot I wanted to get, but I didn't know how parking was here or stuff like that. So I decided to investigate. As it turns out, I'm standing next to my car. There's a big parking lot right next to the tracks here. Um, Pretty cool shot. The Howard Street Tunnel is just about 40 car lengths to the back of the train here. Um, it's a neat location. I always wanted to do that. Then it was on to the museum to see the AFT number one. They restored it to its most famous paint scheme. It wore a couple of different schemes during the Freedom Train tour. This was the most famous. They restored uh, the painting on the tender. It was a bit unusual because they actually had the locomotive stuck in the roundhouse uh, most of the way into the roundhouse for the unveiling. The tender was sticking out the door. I actually saw the Freedom Train back in 1975 on its very first stop at Delaware Park near Wilmington, Delaware. And um, so here's a shot I took back in 1975, almost 51 years ago now. Ouch. That's the first paint scheme it had. The locomotive had been in a Striegel scrapyard in Baltimore after the writing was done with it on the Iron Horse Rambles. And Ross Rowland pulled it out of Striegel's in horrible shape and had it under steam in 30 days. You can't do that today. I'm sure if the current FRA saw what they did to get it running back then, they'd have a heart attack. But they just slapped this basic blue paint scheme on it for the first few legs of the trip until they were able to get it into the a more permanent paint scheme on it. So here it is with its more permanent paint scheme. That's the executive director of the B&O Museum welcoming visitors on the very first day that the locomotive was out. On the way home from Baltimore, I stopped at Aberdeen, Maryland. The station there has been restored. It's been moved back away from the tracks. It sat right up on the tracks until a few years ago, but it's been moved back from the tracks and nicely restored. Here we see a southbound or railroad terminology, westbound train on the old Baltimore and Ohio. Then went to Havre de Grace, Maryland, where Amtrak crosses over the Susquehanna River. This bridge here is slated for replacement over the next decade plus. It's one of the big bottlenecks on the Northeast Corridor, just two tracks and speed restrictions because of the movable bridge. Here we see one of the next gen Acellas going across. So I stuck around here for sunset. Another southbound Amtrak train heading towards Washington. And then not all trains. After I was done with this, I headed over just downriver a short distance still in Havre de Grace, to shoot the Concord Point Lighthouse. This lighthouse is surrounded by trees. It's impossible to see it pretty much in the summertime. Wintertime, you can sort of shoot through the branches and see what's going on. Next up on the program here are some Christmas trains. I did some night photography with all the railroads running their Santa Claus trains, and started off at the Strasburg Railroad. My absolute favorite locomotives are Canadian National 260s, like Strasburg's number 89. Here we see the 89 going past the Cherry Hill station, population 17 more or less. More when the train gets there, less when it leaves, according to the onboard narrator. So I got 89 on one of its last runs in daylight. This is the going away shot also at Cherry Hill. And also out and running was Great Western 210 number 90. Then it got dark. I got my flashes out, and I wanted to do some shots at Cherry Hill. I hadn't done any night photography at Cherry Hill in quite some time. So here's 89 going past the Cherry Hill station. The signal is not for track occupancy. That's why it's yellow. It's actually there's a spring switch for the siding, and it indicates which way the switch is thrown. And then half an hour later, number 90 came by. This one here, I kind of lost the left edge of the smoke box in the dark. But then as it got closer, it was going slow enough. I got two flashes off. So this crops out the station, but it's a little bit better as far as seeing the train. The shot I really wanted, though, was at the Red Caboose Motel. They put in a pond there, an event center, and I wanted to get this shot here of 90 going past the pond. A few nights later, I was up in Boyertown, Pennsylvania on the Colebrookdale Railroad, and they were using this leased Norfolk Southern locomotive. In the middle of the woods, they had this brand new, not in use water tank. I don't know if it'll ever be in use. It might be just for show. They're a very Harry Potterish themed railroad, very Victorian. So maybe just something they put by the tracks just for the heck of it. I don't know. But here we see the train coming south out of Boyertown, past the water tank. And then they actually just push back when they're done. So we get to the end of the run. So a little bit later, here's the train actually pushing back in the same location. And then he's going fairly slow here, so I got off a second shot. Hard part here was throwing flash on the locomotive while working around those lantern posts, because you didn't want to get shadows from the posts on the train. And then actually after Christmas, New Hope was still running trains at night. This is not at night, obviously. They're running 2 trains a day, or in cycles, one diesel powered, one steam powered. Here's a train heading back into New Hope behind a diesel. And then coming out of New Hope, here comes former Lancaster and Chester 280 number 40. Rolling along the Aquatong Creek near a little community called Hood, just outside of New Hope. And arriving in Lahaska. Here's the diesel train again. And number 40. So it's getting dark, and I went up to there's ice everywhere. This was after a major ice storm, and ice everywhere. She really couldn't do a whole lot as far as wandering around to set up flashes because it would just kill yourself. So I finally found a grade crossing that had decent footing with access to the railroad. So here we see the diesel coming out, long hood forward, on a test shot. And then 20 minutes later, here's a diesel going back in again, going away from us here. Another test shot, a little bit of ice coming down. And then it's time for the big show, the steam engine that I wanted to get. Number 40 is going down for its 1472 day inspection. So I wanted to get it before it went down. So along it came, and I fired the strobes, and I fired too soon. It's too far back for the shot. So I'm like, okay, this isn't what I wanted. Um, so I tried to salvage the shot. So I thought maybe it looks better in black and white. So there's the black and white version of it. You can see the snow coming down. So this is actually cropped, trying to save the image, but then I thought, well, the black and white, maybe I can use the whole image. So here's the actual whole image, with the trees lit up against the black sky, snow coming down. And then the actual shot in color looks like this. So I'm not 100% happy with it. I'm hoping the 40 comes back rather quickly because I kind of botched this. Next up in the show, we're going to go back to 2007, a trip I took to Indiana for a couple of excursions. Headed out from New Jersey, and I started off by stopping near Rayland, Ohio, which is on the Ohio River, not far from Wheeling, West Virginia. Got this Norfolk Southern train with Conrail power going on it. Also in the area was this unit working for Warrenton Coal in Rayland. Then I didn't know what this was till I got home and checked the rosters, and apparently this is a Wheeling and Lake Erie train coming down. So these three trains all working around Rayland for a while. It kept us fairly busy. After shooting the Wheeling train back over to the NS train and chased it a bit. Ohio River is off to the left. And then the Wheeling train was switching in Yorkville, Ohio. Obviously, an ex-Southern locomotive with the check letter next to the number under the cab window there. So chased him around a little bit as he was moving these coil cars around. Then back over to Warrenton Coal. This guy here has a branch line into a coal transload in his backyard. The train was sitting here apparently because a few minutes later I was up on a highway overpass looking down on it. And actually, there's a coal loader back there, I guess. And then Norfolk Southern showed up. The steel mill there was still active at the time. Here's a couple of their switchers tucked back in there. All this is gone, but is mostly gone now. The steel mill's closed. Most of it's been removed. And then I went down to Mingo Junction. Mingo Junction was fairly famous back in the late 70s as the last place you could find Conrail's big 6-axle Alco power. Found these locomotives sitting at Mingo. Obviously, they are former remote control units, given all the lights you see along the cab windows there. And the servicing facility at Mingo Junction. Of course, I need to get to Indiana for a trip the next day, and got distracted here on the West Virginia Ohio border. So I had to drive across Ohio to get out to Connorsville, Indiana for the next day. The next day was a trip sponsored by the Southern Appalachia Railway Museum. They're actually based out of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, but Bart Jennings, who was very active with that museum, or was anyhow, would set up trips for them, different fundraising trips all over the country. So we were doing this one here on the Whitewater Valley Railroad. We got a New York Central S1 here, the the 9339. Not really a New York Central locomotive. It was built in 1948 as Procter and Gamble's number 9. But when they donated it to the Whitewater Valley, the stipulation was that they couldn't stay in Procter and Gamble paint. So since the Whitewater Valley runs over a former New York Central branch, they painted it New York Central. So here we are parked in Connorsville underneath a bridge that carries CSX overhead. And somehow somebody on the trip works for CSX and was in touch with a crew on a train that was coming. So we got this over-under shot as part of the trip, with a guy riding the top of the boxcar. Next, we stopped at Dearborn Tower. This was moved to Connorsville. It's not native to the town. Did some shots here. I actually shot Dearborn Tower back in 1998 in its original location in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. So using the even further Wayback Machine here, here's Dearborn Tower as it looked in 1998. What was really weird though was it sat across the tracks from this massive casino. So you got this huge casino hotel and this little tiny tower next to it. Getting back to the trip on the Whitewater Valley. Had a mixed train, freight cars with some coaches behind. I'm just checking some the chat here real fast. Okay. And the train crossing over the Whitewater River. And it began to rain. If you go on a Bart Jennings trip, you always get good photo run bys. He puts on a good show. Got down to Metamora and had to shuffle the train around. Here we see our engine going past a nickel plate hopper car that was in the consist. And they rearranged the train. Now we're ready to go back up to Connorsville. Even put the caboose back on the back end. So they'll put a bit of switching here. Then we went down into Metamora where the Whitewater Canal is. There's one of the canal locks on the left side there. And it's raining pretty good now. And it's a cold rain, very cold rain. So heading back up to Connorsville. This was actually the first trip of 2 that day. After we were finished on the Whitewater Valley, we went over to the Carthage, Knightstown, and Shirley Railroad. And by now it's ice coming down. In fact, that getting up that ramp to get on the train was an adventure in itself because there was a sheet of ice. And the despite the ice coming down, though, me and Bart and a couple of others actually rode the open car right behind the engine. Because that's the only way you do a fan trip. You ride the open car. You just do it. End of the line, ran around the train. From there, we went up to the Indiana Transportation Museum in Noblesville for a night photo session. And I had my Lumidyne with me at the time. I was using the Lumidyne, the over-the-shoulder portable strobe set, and it crapped out. I don't know if the weather got to it or what. It crapped out. However, the gang from Rail Pace was on the trip. Tom Nemeth, Dennis Connell, they were on the trip, and I knew they had a flash gun and flash bulbs. So I called them at their hotel and got them out of the hot tub and over to the railroad, and we used their flash bulbs for the night photo session. And you see the ice coming down here. If I remember correctly, they gave me the flash gun and flash bulbs, and I did the lighting here. And if that's the case, this might be the last time I ever did a night photo session myself using flash bulbs. So next morning, we are at the Indiana Transportation Museum. There's Bart ready to go. And the sun's out. Weather's improved dramatically. So away we go with our photo freight. We're in Noblesville here. Noblesville had some street running. And we did a couple of run-bys in the street. Here it is going past Sid's Bar in Noblesville. And then down the street. We have one run-by here where just as the train started forward onto the street trackage, an SUV pulled out in front of the photo line, and Bart was running down the street yelling, "Stop the run-by, stop the run-by." Got cleared the street, and then we did it again. This is all gone now. The Indiana Transportation Museum had issues. So our nickel plate Jeep up front, nickel plate caboose at the back. And then we had a passenger train out as well using this former Monon SW1. When the museum shut down, a lot of its equipment got scattered. Most of the significant stuff got out. Some of the not significant stuff got cut up. There were several CTA L cars that got cut up. This locomotive got out. It went to somebody else. I forget who picked it up. But in the process of moving it out of Indiana here, they took a torch and cut the top of the cab off for clearances to move it over a highway. Now we're at Fisher's. For this photo run by here, we wanted to going past the nickel plate bar and grill. Obviously, it's what a photo prop that is. And And in fact, the bar was closed when we got here. But looking in the windows, you can see they had sweatshirts and t-shirts for sale, stuff like that. Well, there was a waitress in there starting to open up, and one of our guys banged on the window. I said, and when she came over, and he asked if we could go in and buy shirts and stuff, and she goes, "Yeah, sure." So she sold several sweatshirts and t-shirts and stuff that day. For this run by here, we're on a pretty busy road, so the photo line was over on the sidewalk. And then when the grade crossing lights went off, we all ran out into the street to block traffic, get the shot. I had originally pictured the shot including the entire crossbucks in the street in front of me, the X's. But in the excitement of charging out into the street at the last second, I kind of botched my composition here. So I went into Photoshop, and I asked it to add some stuff to the bottom, which it did. And to make it still be a 3:2 ratio, I added stuff to the left and the right as well. So everything to the left of the phone pole on the left, Photoshop added. Everything on the right to the right of the not the door, but the two windows on the to the right of the door are original, but the other two windows on the edge of the frame, Photoshop added those. Problem is, that's not the way the building looks. Fortunately, I had a frame that showed more of the building, so I went into Photoshop again, copied how the building should look, and put it in there. So this is like my final result. Everything you see here is the way it should be. Maybe the scuff marks on the X might have been different. I don't know. That's Photoshop put those in. Only thing I'm not sure if it's how it looks is whatever's to the left of the phone pole on the left edge there. So anyhow, getting back to the trip. Nickel plate heavyweight car on the back. Now we're running with a passenger train. And of course, when you're on an excursion, you got to have more smoke. You just have to have it. So here's our Jeep putting out a nice plume of smoke. Once again, several good run-bys here. And when that trip was over, I headed over to Crawfordsville, Indiana. Amtrak's Cardinal was due through, and Crawfordsville featured some of the last semaphore signals on the former Monon. This was on Monon trackage, now CSX. By this time in 2007, there were only two stands of semaphores left in the United States. The Santa Fe semaphores on the line over Raton Pass in New Mexico, and the Monon semaphores in Indiana. Now, back then, of course, this was before alien bees and synchronized strobes and stuff like that. So the only way to shoot a moving train was to use the streak of light technique. So here goes Amtrak's Cardinal through the semaphores. This is actually a going away shot. Headlight would be too bright for a coming at you shot. That's the Cardinal going away through the semaphores. Next day, we're in Romney, Indiana, in semaphore territory. Amtrak coming through. And just behind him is CSX freight. And then we headed over to Bloomington, Indiana to chase the Indiana Railroad. I love their paint scheme. That red with the bold white graphics on the side, really cool. So two trains were meeting here in Bloomington. And the chase was on. Here we see the train crossing over Tulip Trestle in Tulip, Indiana. Now, the trestle was opened in 1906. It is 2,295 feet long and 157 feet above the valley floor. So we started in Bloomington. This is actually Bloomfield, Indiana. Then you get over to Switch City, where the railroad has its shops, and you wonder where the main line went to. You look around, there's a shop there with a run-through track, but no evidence of the main line. So kind of baffling. I'll come to find out the run-through track in the shop is actually the main line. So here comes the train through the shop. We get over to Linton, Indiana, crosses the diamond here. That's the Milwaukee Road going across. Here, the train has to do a maneuver. So it's coming at you here. Eventually, it's got to go from right to left on the other track over the diamond. So it pulls here, backs up around an interchange, and then here it comes forward again. It just backed up on that interchange track you see on the right edge of the screen there. From there, we went over to Duggar, Indiana, a junkyard there. But the attraction at the junkyard was it had the last existing Amtrak RTG turbo train. One of the turbo cars. And I believe these are all cut up now. I don't think these exist anymore. Pointless arrow with turbo power underneath of it. Inside the cab. And then from there, we went up to Jasonville, Indiana. That's where Indiana Railroad has its Hiawatha Yard. There's the power we had chased earlier in the day on the servicing tracks. From there, back over to Romney for semaphores. Amtrak coming through again. And once again, because this is the days before synchronized flash, I had to do a going away shot with the train going through the semaphore blades. Next morning, we're back at Romney again. The Amtrak going north. And you see the signal on the right is set to stop for anything going south. Amtrak cleared, the signal clears up. And it drops to approach. And drops to stop as another CSX train comes up. With least power on the point. From there, it was over to Frankfort, Indiana. And I don't even know how I knew about this. I guess somebody on the trip told me about it. Old Colin Tower here, as well as a roundhouse. But there's a local that goes out of Frankfort that I was looking for to chase on Norfolk Southern here. And the reason I wanted to chase it was because in Elwood, Indiana, there's street running. Once again, I really don't remember how I found out about this, but it was worth doing. The train has a locomotive on each end because just like the Indiana Railroad a few days earlier, it has to do a maneuver at a diamond to change directions. But the way it changes directions is it needed power on both ends. So here's the going away shot of the other end. And here's the diamond. It's coming across at us here. And then a few minutes later, the other end of the train is going from right to left across the diamond. This is in Alexandria, Indiana. One end of the train and the other end. And then from there, drove home. I'm gonna wrap the program up with something I did on January 16th, just a little while ago, on the Western Maryland Scenic. I started out the previous day heading to Cumberland, Maryland. I stopped in Hancock, Maryland, just to see what would come along. Got this westbound CSX freight. There was a scanner about 6 miles east of here, so I could hear trains coming. I heard another train coming behind this guy, and I'm on the shady side of the tracks here if the sun was out. And the sun was threatening to come out. So I thought, let me change sides. So I went across the bridge to the other side of the tracks and got the second westbound. And then a third westbound actually showed up. This is all within a couple of hours. So for the B&O main line, it's actually fairly busy. And this guy here actually blocked out an eastbound train that showed up at the same time. From there, I went into Cumberland to the Amtrak station, did a few shots of a CSX train. I was looking for the Capital Limited, well, the Floridian, but it was running about 3 hours late. Next morning, we're on the Western Maryland Scenic, using a B-32-8 the railroad has recently acquired. They painted it in the Western Maryland circus colors, even though Western Maryland never had a B-32-8. This was put together by the railroad with Brett Bodenschatz, yes, coordinating everything. This is our first run by at City Junction, just outside Cumberland. But Brett had us in the Narrows for sunrise, and we got this shot here. Same location, just walk out across a bridge to get onto old US 40 and get this broadside shot. From there, it was on to Brush Tunnel for this shot here. This railroad runs on former Western Maryland trackage until it reaches a location known as switch number 9. At switch number 9, it diverts onto the old Cumberland in Pennsylvania. And here we are on the Cumberland in Pennsylvania. This bridge is actually over the old Western Maryland right-of-way, which no longer has tracks at this point. It's part of the Great Allegheny Passage Trail. Did a couple of run-bys here. The other end of the train also had a B-32-8 painted Western Maryland, but in the basic black. If you look up on the bridge, you'll see the photo line is set up there for the other end of the train for the circus engine when it comes by. And up to Frostburg. Garner's Meadow. Back to Brush Tunnel. And Helmstedter's Curve. There's our entire train on Helmstedter's Curve. And the sign up on the hillside there, it says Helmstedter's Curve, but it's actually a memorial to Dave Goodhart of Goodhart Productions, who put together some pretty incredible photo charters on the Western Maryland Scenic and other places. But he wanted his ashes scattered on Helmstedter's Curve. which his friends accommodated that last request and erected this sign in his honor. From there, back towards Cumberland, crossing over the US 40 bridge, one end of the train. We walked across the bridge. I got the other end of the train. Then that night, we did a night photo session at the old Western Maryland station in Cumberland. And then the railroad just recently acquired a steel mill switcher, Conemaugh Blacklick number 111. So they brought that out for some night photos. I'm not sure why I got two shots of it here. And then we got it up at the station as well. And that is going to wrap things up. I forgot to make up a coming next month slide here. Let me look at my calendar real fast. The next program is going to be the last Wednesday in February, February 25th. I'm going to shut this down for the folks on YouTube now and then take some